I am recording. Hi there, Kate.
Hey, Dominic, how are you?
I'm good. Every time we start this and I listen back, the hi Kate that I do is just so abnormally loud that
Oh,
it screws up all the settings on my thing.
I like that. I think that we could just be prepared for that each time, and it just sets it off in a really cute little tone. I like it.
I know we all give each other that like 1, 2, 3 death stare. Who's going to be the first to say hi?
How are you today? I'm excited about today's episode.
I am too. This is one that I'm not particularly familiar with, but
hmm
as I started getting into some research, I found it and thought, this is kind of ooky and spooky, and this is a cool one to know. So I thought, let's just chuck it in.
Let's do it. Let's share it.
Yeah. So, well, the theme. Let's talk about the topic for this week.
Okay.
And by total chance, we are heading back to the same part of the world as my last episode, which was our first episode.
hmm
Russia.
Oh, Mother Russia. They just do some kooky shit over there. I'm okay with it. I'm okay
They
with it.
do. I promise I will not keep going back, but this just spoke to me. I'm going down the rabbit hole, okay?
I love it. Let's do it together. Let's hold hands and jump down that rabbit hole, Dal. Let's do it.
All right, Alice. So yeah, this week I really wanted to talk about this broader topic of how seemingly innocuous people or places or things can just be all of a sudden super, super scary, like dolls, for instance.
Yeah.
Or just your own home. It should be safe, it should be fine, but all of a sudden, boom, it can be super, super scary.
Exactly. Like someone always had, if they stayed at usually their grandmother or grandfather's house, there was always some like 1920s like porcelain something that during the day it was all cute and sweet. And then as soon as the lights went out and you had to sleep in the lounge room on the fold out, it just took on another life.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess the title of this episode is, or the story is called Russian Mummified Dolls. But yeah, back to the topic. Like another way of looking at it, it's a place like a home where everything seems normal, but when you look closer, it's something way more sinister. So yeah, I thought this was a cool one. It's maybe a little less graphic as my first episode.
That's okay though. We can just go in waves from something really graphic, and then I'll talk about fictional things happening in space. Like it's all part of it.
I will do a little disclaimer because as we get through the story, we are talking about someone, an individual, and you and I, obviously, we don't profess to be medical doctors or psychologists.
Not yet.
Not yet. We're working on it. Mine's with the mail.
Same.
So our comments are just our layperson opinions. Mental health is obviously an extremely complex and sensitive topic that affects so many communities in a variety of ways. We need to be super careful when commenting or judging people. In saying all that, mental health issues do not mean people have free passes to do horrible things.
True.
So this story is particularly disturbing, so just warning you.
Perfect.
No one's eating anyone though.
Okay, not this time. Not yet, anyway. But it is around dinner time, though, so there's time. There's time while we're recording this.
Yeah, I have dinner waiting for me, so it's
amazing.
Be my treat. So,
I hope you'll have it. If you've got an appetite after this story, that says something about us. But that's fine. We've already established that we're pretty cuckoo, so
please join us.
Yeah, join us on this cuckoo journey.
We're all by ourselves. All right, here we go. So let me introduce you to my good old pal and friend, Anatoly Moskvin.
Oh, Moskvin, that old scallywag.
Yep, had quite a few nights out with him. Now, he once lived in a place called Nizhny Novgorod. And it is the 5th largest city in Russia. Okay, so the first episode I did, it was, USSR. That's obviously a very different time, but it's the exact same place, or relatively. So this is more modern Russia, okay?
Yeah.
So Anatoly had this quirky habit. He's a bit like us, old Anatoly. He loves spending a lot of his time at cemeteries.
Okay.
Now, quick pop quiz. Do you say cemeteries or do you say cemeteries?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would probably say cemetery.
Yeah, I say
Yeah.
cemetery, but it's like the whole Moscow thing that I said in the first episode. It's not
Yeah.
Moscow. It's not a cow that's got a bit of green on its back. It's anyway.
That's okay. We're also not what's the term for someone who
Prejudice.
studies language?
Oh,
I don't even know. That's how good we're going.
I'm gonna, for the sake of this episode, I'm gonna say cemeteries. If you're listening, please feel free to complain to me.
Oh, please do. Write in, complain.
I'm
Oh,
happy to
we
hear
do,
it.
yeah. And please let us know any of the answers to the many, many questions that we seem to ask but not know the answers to. That's part of our stories. Jump on the socials. Let us know.
One day we should do our own encyclopedia set.
Yeah.
You know, anyway, let's let that mull that one over.
We digress. Yeah.
All right. So, you know, Anatoly, he had this bit of a quirk. He had this habit. He really loved hanging out in cemeteries. And he said he began wandering through these cemeteries with friends when he was still a schoolboy. Now, in particular, they visited this one particular cemetery called Presnaya Etna Cemetery, located in the Leninsky district of Nizhny Novgorod.
Mm.
Okay, that was
I
about
love that you've done this to yourself, Dom. You have absolutely thrown yourself under a bus by choosing all of these places with all of these pronunciations. And I'm really here for it. I'm happy to watch you struggle through it. This is fun.
bus all day long, and I'm not ashamed. I'm a mumbler. I don't speak very clearly, so I'm just going to embrace it.
Do it.
All right, so Anatoly, that was the first cemetery that he went to, and it would later come out that Moskvin attributed his interest in the dead to a childhood incident during which he witnessed a funeral procession for an 11-year-old girl. He alleged that while at the funeral, family and friends of the deceased forced him to kiss the dead girl's face.
Oh, yuck.
Now,
Yeah, it's a strong pass.
Yeah, not going to happen.
I mean, I've had some pretty bad dates that it's felt like I was kissing the face of someone that was a corpse, but I would not attribute it to this poor guy. Oh, bless him.
But it's good to understand, like, he himself has, you know, he has said this himself, where this obsession and this interest really came from. And I think it is kind of interesting. And I'm looking forward, as we roll through the story, why you think it links up and so on. It's very rare that we get this level of detail into someone or something so early on in its infancy. It's the beginning of it. And also hearing, like, I'm about to read, he's got some specific words. Like, he described this incident really quite graphically. So in his own words, he said, "An adult pushed my face down to the waxy forehead of the girl in an embroidered cap, and there was nothing I could do but kiss her as ordered."
Wow.
He also wrote, "I kissed her once, then again, and then again. And the girl's grieving mother then put a wedding ring on Anatoly's finger and a wedding ring on her dead daughter's finger."
What? That's like next level arranged marriage.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I mean, it's quite possible. I didn't do enough research, I'm sorry, but it's quite possible that that sort of thing may have been quite not out of the abnormal. Like, it could have been quite a commonplace thing, or well, clearly no one said anything. But he describes it as my strange marriage with, and her name was Natasha Petrova, was useful. He described it as useful.
Oh, okay. I'm starting to get a slight sense of this this person and maybe where it's heading, but okay, interesting.
So that's just a bit of background setting. Really cool that he can attribute it back to such a specific moment and action. He could even remember how many times he kissed her and the wedding ring and all that jazz. All right, so after a little bit more about Anatoly, beyond just his, first kiss.
He's strange. His first kiss and wedding for that
marriage.
First marriage.
All right, so after graduating from the Philological Faculty of Moscow State, Moscow, State University, Moskvin became well known in academic circles. His main areas of academic interest were Celtic history and folklore, as well as languages and linguistics.
Oh, we need him on this podcast.
Yeah.
That linguistics, that's what we need.
He would do a much better job than I'm doing right now.
Oh, same.
So Moskvin had a deep interest in cemeteries, burial rituals, death, and the occult. And look, on their own, they're really fascinating things. I would probably say I have maybe not an equal obsession, but I have an interest in all of those topics.
Yeah.
But I think you can sort of see where he got that from such childhood trauma.
Definitely.
He kept a personal library of over 60,000 books and documents, as well as a large doll collection.
Oh, see, you've lost me. That's a red flag. Yeah. Okay.
And fellow academics, they would describe Moskvin as both a genius and an eccentric.
Mm-hmm. Two of the big personality traits that, again, red flags. So we're up to 3 red flags at the moment. Okay.
Imagine if you, Kate, I hope you don't mind me sharing, you are a teacher yourself. Imagine if another member of your faculty, offered you a drink back at their place, a bit of celebration at the end of the year, and you walk in and there's just, I don't know, 50 dolls wedged up against the side of the room watching you while you have a martini and have sardines on toast.
Yeah, there's a lot wrong with that. I mean, I can't claim to say there isn't someone in the staff room that that doesn't have that when it comes to mind. But no names. But yeah, I would be cutting that date pretty short, to be honest with you. I would be out of there.
I would laugh if you actually worked with someone named Anatoly, but
yes, I would love to. I don't, fortunately. Otherwise, I would be making sure that my desk was moved further away from theirs, but that's okay. I don't have to.
Smart move.
Yeah.
But look, all right, we've got a bit of a picture of him. He's a bit of a genius and an eccentric, and, maybe isn't someone I would be best friends with, but everything's pretty above board so far.
Yeah.
In 2005, so this is pretty recent, okay?
Yeah,
in 2005, Oleg Ryabov, a fellow academic and publisher, he commissioned Moskvin to summarize and list the dead in more than 700 cemeteries in 40 regions of the Nizhny Novgorod Oblast.
Okay.
So it was part of his job to go spend time in these cemeteries and catalog and so on. And that's obviously, that is important and interesting work to someone like Anatoly. Now, Moskvin claimed that between 2005 and 2007, he had gone on foot to inspect 752 cemeteries across the region, walking up to 30 kilometers, which is almost 19 miles a day.
Wow.
And during these travels, he drank from puddles, spent nights in haystacks and at abandoned farms, or he even slept in the cemeteries themselves.
Could he, with no Airbnbs, couldn't find like a little bed and breakfast to go to, felt the need to, couldn't take a water bottle? Yeah, he's opted for puddles?
That's a good point. I mean, look, he's committed to his work.
It sounds like it.
You've got to get through a lot of 752 cemeteries within 2 years.
Wow.
I'm assuming there's more than just a couple of people in each. So it's very dedicated to his work, and obviously sounds like he's a bit of a loner as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't imagine you could fit in lots of visits to restaurants and stuff if you're visiting 750 cemeteries, going 30 Ks a day. Yeah.
But obviously he was quite comfortable in these spaces. He felt at home there. So Moskvin was sometimes questioned by police on the suspicion of vandalism and theft, but he was never arrested or detained after stating his academic credentials and the purpose of him being there. Which is, I don't know, totally fair enough.
Yeah.
Now, as an adult, Moskvin led quite a secluded life. Shock horror.
Shock. I'm blown away by that fact.
They say he never married or dated, apart from that first broad.
Well, he was technically married, I'd say. Yeah. Would you think it was the dolls? I can't be surprised he's going to bring too many people home. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It says that he never married or dated, preferring to live with his parents. And Moskvin abstained from drinking alcohol and smoking, and is purportedly a virgin. So
okay. Just a bit of sort of personality background for,
Yeah,
for our
different place to the rest of, well, definitely you and me. I'm pretty sure we've done every single one of those. But
I did live with my parents at one point, yes.
there you go. Now, in 2016, it was reported that he planned to marry a 25-year-old native of his hometown who attended his trial. But look, that's all. That was just a little tack-on thing that I was able to dig up. But
Yeah.
it never happened, and it's only about intended intentions. So
there is always the next season of The Bachelor that
True.
he could consider.
Oh,
Could you imagine? Oh, that all
and it
just
could be
flashed
like
into my mind.
set in cemeteries and stuff like that.
There you go. Oh, I think we've just discovered the new series.
Do you know
Bachelor.
what? They've probably thought of something. It's such a
Probably
terrible
have.
show. I'm sorry, all you Bachelor and Bachelorette lovers out there. I just can't bring myself to watch it.
I can't say we're going to be doing an episode on that.
Actually, I know of a couple of stories, maybe not Bachelor, but there are some stories out there of, people that have gone on to those like 70s and 80s, like Meet Your Lover. They're hiding behind the wall. You got to ask them questions. Like there's a few of them, especially in America. And a couple of like serial killers have ended up they were on that show at one point or another. And it's not until after the fact that I can't believe I've forgotten the name, but I'll find
like
it.
Perfect Match or something like that. Is it those kinds of things? Yeah. Okay. Well, we've got the format. We'll set it in a cemetery. They're standing behind the tomb. Who's behind the tomb? Oh, it's Anatoly with his dolls. Cool. Take him. He seems nice.
Anatoly with his Barbies.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into what actually happened. All right. So Mustman was arrested on November 2nd, 2011, by police investigating a spat of grave desecrations and some, vandalism and stuff like that in cemeteries in and around the Nizhny Novgorod area. Investigators from the Center for Combating Extremism. My goodness, I love how dramatic they are with all of their organizations and so
fantastic.
on.
Yeah.
So the Center for Combating Extremism, they discovered that 26 bodies, initially reported as 29, in Moskvin's flat and garage. So they found bodies.
Okay. So this has taken a turn. He's upgraded from dollies to bodies. Right.
Yes. Now, there is video of this. So at your own peril, go and watch it. But video released by police shows that the bodies, they were seated on shelves and sofas in small rooms that were full of books and papers and just general clutter just around his home.
Oh my God.
And although only 26 bodies were discovered in his home, Moskvin was suspected of desecrating as many as 150 graves after police found numerous grave accoutrements, such as metal nameplates removed from headstones and so on.
Okay. The first thing that pops into my head, just as a little sidebar to that, is the smell. How would his house smell? I can't quite process.
I'm so glad you asked.
Oh, do tell. What have I done? Just go.
So police also discovered instructions for making the dolls.
Oh, okay.
So he had regular dolls, normal, everyday, whatever dolls that we all may have had, but there's also quite a collection of human dolls.
Yeah, okay, human dolls. Good.
Yes.
Okay.
So they discovered these instructions for making these dolls. There was also maps of cemeteries in the region, and he also had a collection of photographs and videos depicting open graves and disinterred bodies. Though none of this evidence could be conclusively connected to any of the bodies found in the apartment, it's all that circumstantial evidence, right? Like, why would you have this?
I think, to be honest, I think that they might have had him on a charge based on the human bodies positioned around his bookshelves. So they might not have needed the paperwork. I feel like they kind of had him.
Yeah. I mean, but it's also interesting, right? Where's the you think about incriminating evidence and so on, I don't think from what I've read and seen that he necessarily thought what he was doing was breaking the law. And we'll get into why he did what he did, but there was obviously no intention of covering this sort of stuff up. This was just his life. This is how he lived.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So, according to the investigation, the bodies primarily came from cemeteries in that same region, though some may have come as far away as Moscow.
Mm-hmm.
Moskvin actively cooperated with the investigators, and he claimed he made the dolls over the course of 10 years.
Okay.
His parents, right? He lived with his parents.
Oh.
They were away for large portions of the year, and even though when they did come home, they were just unaware of these sorts of activities. He'd always been interested in dolls. He obviously worked in an area where being in a cemetery is not, out of the ordinary. And he clearly was a great doll maker. So, they were unaware that any of this was happening in their own home.
In their own house. Were they, I'm going to assume that these dolls were sort of kept like in his quarters, or is this like mum and dad coming home and having visitors and being like, oh, just move Barry the doll off the couch, sweetie, we'll just get you a cup of tea, just put him on the other chair. Like,
look, I don't know how far, if you looked at the videos, it was quite a setup at home. Like it wasn't like this is just in a garage or something like that. Like some were placed in the garage, but he set them up as if they were just any sort of normal thing that you had in your home. So
okay, yeah, wow, okay, it must have been very convincing. I'll attempt to find some footage that's not too terrifying and pop a little on our socials for this episode. But my goodness, it sounds
it's more creepy now that you know. But all right, so obviously our Anatoly, this is just my opinion, maybe not the healthiest man in the world. So and the investigators believe so too. So after psychiatric evaluation, it was determined that Moskvin suffered from a form of paranoid schizophrenia. And if you know anything about paranoid schizophrenia, they're often not violent people. It's a state of fear that they live in. It is horrendous and horrible. And there's even some simulators online that you can watch some footage, and they kind of simulate what life is like for someone that suffers from paranoid schizophrenia. And it is just, heartbreaking to see the world through their eyes. And there's a really big difference here between, people who are mad and people who are bad. And I think we've got to be really, really careful about pigeonholing people doing certain things that to you and I don't make any sense whatsoever. They're not logical, they're grotesque, they're monstrous, but in reality they're not. And this was absolutely acceptable and normal behavior for Anatoly.
Yeah.
So it's great that they were able to, he at some point was able to get a diagnosis. It's obviously a little bit too late in life, but he was evaluated and that's what he was diagnosed with.
Okay.
So in a hearing on the 25th of May 2012, so the next year, the Leninsky District Court of Nizhny Novgorod deemed Moskvin unfit to stand trial, and they released him from, they were releasing him from any sort of criminal liability. Now, he didn't kill anyone, remember? These are corpses. These are, yes, he's done some horrible things and dug people up, but he didn't hurt anyone.
Yeah, and that's where that that sort of moral compass is tested, because naturally there would be crimes around, and I'm sure you'll go into it a little bit, but naturally there's crimes around desecrating graves or moving bodies or taking bodies. But you're right in that sense that he didn't kill anyone. So that's where you start to, it starts to become a bit unique.
So he was instead sentenced to coercive medical measures. I read that and wasn't sure how far down the rabbit hole I wanted to go, and it reminds me a little bit about your lovely Nellie Bly testisode, which if you've not listened to, definitely go back and listen to, because I think I got the flavoring of maybe not so great, like coercive medical measures. It could potentially be a little bit something I don't want to read while I'm also reading this, but this is 2012, so who knows, it may not be as dramatic. And
and the wording around that too, in many countries they changed it from, torture to extreme interrogation techniques. Same thing, different name.
Yeah. So the prosecution, they were satisfied with the decision and did not appeal the verdict either. Okay.
Okay.
Moskvin, he was eventually moved to a psychiatric clinic with his stay to be reviewed regularly. And in February 2013, a hearing approved an extension of his psychiatric treatment, which we are all big supporters of treatment. If that's what you need, that's what you should get. Moskvin's treatment was again extended in April 2014 and yet again in July 2015.
Okay.
So it's ongoing, which it's sad, but it's also fantastic that back in the day, it was often the system would just, i.e. not have enough money because of budget cuts, or sadly didn't have the knowledge, and folks in this situation would just be released.
Yeah. One of the things that strikes me is that, it's 2021, we're talking 2015. This is our lifetime. And when we talk about a lot of these stories, I forget that, when we do put the dates on it, this isn't all happening in the 1800s. This is recent, which makes it even slightly more unnerving, I find.
And that's why there's things like video footage and so on. So it's a little bit better or more modern documentation is out there.
Yeah.
Okay, so in 2014, a spokesman stated, in their words, after 3 years of monitoring him in a psychiatric clinic, it is absolutely clear that Moskvin is not mentally fit for trial. He will therefore be kept for psychiatric treatment at the clinic.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yep.
In September 2018, Moskvin's doctors stated that he was no longer dangerous and petitioned the Leninsky District Court of Nizhny Novgorod to release him for outpatient care from home. However, in February 2019, so really not that long ago, a subsequent psychiatric evaluation found that it was too early to release Moskvin, and the hospital withdrew their petition.
Okay.
So that's where he's at. That's how it was discovered. I feel for the police force that found these bodies in this house. And we're going to go into, I think I go into a little bit about, what they witnessed when they first saw it, but you have to think of their mental health as well. That would have been quite traumatic.
Absolutely. I feel like you wouldn't really know what you were looking at. I don't think I would be able to determine the difference between, something fake and something real in that sort of instance. I feel like your brain just goes into a bit of a trying to sort out what it's seeing, but I wouldn't know. And
that's the link back to the topic. This is a totally harmless, innocent object, but all of a sudden it has this underneath story that you are unaware of, and it just So
gives you the heebie-jeebies.
The question is, why did he do it? We have an understanding about his trauma and the fact that he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, but from his perspective, why did he do it? And there was an interview with Moskvin. So after his arrest, Moskvin stated he felt great sympathy for the dead children and thought that they could be brought back to life by either science or black magic. Remember, he studied this sort of subject matter. And as an expert on Celtic culture, Moskvin learned that the ancient Druids slept on graves in order to communicate with the spirits of their dead. He also studied the culture of the peoples of Siberia, which was not very far from my last story. In particular, the ancient Yakuts, and discovered they had a similar practice for communicating with the dead. So, he came at it from sort of like an academic perspective.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
And had, genuine interest in what he was looking into. So Moskvin, he began searching for obituaries of recently deceased children, and when he found an obituary that spoke to him, he would sleep on the child's grave in order to determine if the spirit wished to be brought back to life.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Moskvin claimed he had been doing this for around 20 years and insisted that when he began, he never dug up a grave without the permission of the child within.
Oh, goodness.
As he grew older, it became physically painful for him to sleep on the graves. So he began bringing the bodies home where it would be more comfortable to sleep near them.
Okay.
He hoped that the spirits would be more willing to speak in a safe and welcoming home, and that they might be easier to hear when they were no longer underground.
All right.
Now,
So just
like,
to his bed. Like all of everything that you've just said, this is really like I'm struggling here, Dom, because everything that you've just said, it seems like he's actually coming at it from a kind perspective, from a perspective of, I am asking permission of these spirits and of these subjects, and I am looking at it from this historical perspective, and I want to try some of these things and imagine if I could bring someone back to life, imagine what that would do for their families. And so I'm really, inherently this is bad, but there's something about the fact that it's done in like the intention of it. It's really, it's
and
messy.
that's why I wanted to make a point about paranoid schizophrenia and the fact that they operate to a different set of logic and morals and ethics. It's never going to make sense to you and I, but the way he spoke about it, and there are lots of stories of other people who are paranoid schizophrenics have gone on to do quite horrendous things. I just listened to a story about the vampire from Sacramento, and that's someone that murdered people, and they didn't think they were doing anything wrong. They were oblivious to the whole thing. But it's coming from this place of logic, and I don't empathize with the actions he took, but I can empathize with his reasoning by what he was doing was from a place of kindness in what he thought was being kind.
That's right. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah.
So after exhuming the corpses, Moskvin researched mummification theories and techniques in an attempt to preserve the bodies. He would dry the corpses using a combination of salt and baking soda, and then cage the bodies in secure, dry places in and around cemeteries. And once the bodies dried, Moskvin carried them to his home, where he used various methods to make dolls. And this was in an attempt to give the children functional bodies to be used when he eventually discovered a way to bring them back to life, feeling that their physical remains were too decayed and ugly for them to feel comfortable or happy. And so he's trying to prepare them and get the bodies prepared and ready and looking good. And look, sometimes after a big weekend, I wish someone would get formaldehyde.
Yeah, I honestly, there is times where I look and I'm at the mummified stage of dehydration. Absolutely.
I could use an Anatoly. Some Monday mornings.
Yeah, some Monday mornings we could all use an Anatoly.
Now there's a t-shirt design, someone.
Yeah.
Okay, so unable to prevent the bodies from withering and shrinking as they dried, he would wrap the limbs in strips of cloth and stuff the body cavity with rags and padding to provide fullness, sometimes even adding wax masks decorated with nail polish over the faces before dressing them in brightly colored children's clothes and wigs.
Okay.
These details would obviously make the bodies appear to be large homemade dolls.
Yeah.
Which essentially is what prevented their discovery.
Okay.
Wax, clothing, wrapping, they're dried. Things like smell and all that sort of stuff were pretty well taken care of because of the techniques that he employed.
Yeah.
Now, it was unclear if each doll contained a full set of human remains. We've got to be really careful here. When a body's being exhumed and moved, you're not going to perform more autopsies. All of these bodies and the that they're connected to have rights and so on. So we've got to remain respectful.
Absolutely.
Investigators later found music boxes or toys inside the bodies of the dead girls so that they could produce sounds when Moskvin touched them.
Okay. Yeah.
There were also personal belongings and clothing inside some of the mummies.
Mm-hmm.
And one mummy had a piece of her own gravestone with her name scrawled on it inside of her body.
Mm. Okay.
Contained a hospital tag with the date and the cause of the girl's death.
I feel like they're extreme measures to beat the luggage prices of airplanes. Like if it brings a whole new meaning to carry on in terms of those storage solutions. But you know, if he's trying to do this to make them happy, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's like trying to be respectful of their past and their history, and that they have rights and feelings, and they might want to carry a bit of their history with them. I mean, even there was a third body that had a dried human heart. So I think as grotesque as all of this sounds, there's a level of care and respect, I guess, from his perspective, he thought, in honoring and preparing bodies. All right. So yeah.
It's so heavy. It's really challenging sometimes because, as obviously we've spoken a lot about the fact that this podcast, we use humor to really process horrific situations. But this story, I think, is one of the first ones where I'm really just struggling to get my head around it. Like I'm definitely not trying to make fun of anything, but I am speechless at times, which, as you know, for me is completely unlike me. Bless.
Yeah, it was a really interesting one, which I thought was worth doing. Anyway, we're not too far off. Moskvin was aware that he was committing a crime, but he felt that the dead children were calling out to be rescued, and he believed that rescuing the children was more important than obeying the law. He was also motivated by his own desire to have children, specifically a daughter.
Okay.
Now, Moskvin often regretted that he never had children, and at one point attempted to adopt a young girl against the wishes of his parents. Probably a good idea.
I think so.
But his application was declined due to his low income.
Right.
Now, he was an academic, but I find it strange that he was tasked with this big job. He's obviously a genius. He is very good at what he does, passionate about what he does. But anyway, low income.
Okay.
Now, Moskvin denied any sexual attraction to the dolls and instead considered them to be his actual children.
Right.
He spoke to them and interacted with the corpses. He sang songs to them. He watched cartoons with them, and he even held birthday parties and celebrated holidays for their benefit.
Okay. I don't want to see Toy Story 5, the Moskvin tale. I really don't.
My goodness.
I don't want to see that. That would not be fun.
Yeah.
Oof. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So to wrap it up, there's no denying that this whole story is disturbing, and we have to remember he didn't actually commit any murder.
Yeah.
It is clear that Moskvin was an unwell but highly intelligent man that, in my opinion, he tried extremely hard to make sense of this reality. He is educated. He's highly educated, and he is trying to make sense of what he was experiencing. And because it wasn't necessarily so obvious, even to his parents, that there was something else going on there, it was almost like self-care, doing self-medicating, self-managing of a situation that he was just unaware of. And look, it's not like paranoid schizophrenia wasn't something that the world was unaware of in this time, but it just flew under the radar. Now, they do say he went to extreme lengths, and I'm in no way accusing or justifying, obviously, what he did.
Yeah.
But I think I struggle to paint him with a simple brushstroke of just being a murderer. And
that's right.
Yeah, I think what frightens me the most about the story, like I said in the topic, is the idea of it's almost like a house of terrors, or it's this seemingly innocuous item that shouldn't be scary, but if you dig deep enough, you can find the truth and reality to it. And it's almost like the Conjuring movie. You know, it's just a doll, but whatever. There's this whole story behind it.
Well, it ain't just a doll at Anatoli's. That's for sure. There's a little bit more to that story. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So good old buddy Anatoly. We wish you well and care.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't you ever give me, or anyone for that matter, give me a doll.
Dolls,
I'm fine with clowns, but don't give me a doll. I think I'm always gonna think back to it. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think this has ruined dolls for me. I hope that our listeners, you know, if dolls are your thing, that's so fine. But hopefully they are, you know, polyester and cotton and whatnot. I don't even know what you make a doll out of. I'm just so flabbergasted by this story, Dominic. You've thrown me for 6.
Good. How's that?
That was great. I really enjoy as well. So usually for our listeners, if they don't know, occasionally I will have a look at the tales that Dominic's going to tell, and I try to just sort of skim over them because I really enjoy this as a storytelling time for me. So I kind of get the same sort of reaction. So if you're feeling the same way that I'm feeling, know that's fine. You just feel your feelings. That's all you can do. Oh, bless Anatoly.
Yeah. And at your own risk. There is so much information out there about this story. There are lots and lots of articles. There's lots of video footage, as I said. I got most of my information from an All Things Interesting article. I've said I love their articles. They are interesting. It's a great place to start from a researcher's perspective.
Great.
And it's the author of that particular article is William DeLong. So I just want to pay credit.
Yeah, absolutely. Due. Yeah, we'll pop that link to that on our Instagram page as well. So if you want to read a bit more about it or check it out, then you can access that nice and easy on our Shit and Bricks Instagram page.
Do you want to give us a bit of a teaser for next week, Kate? Or are you too thrown?
Oh, no, I'd love to. I think a change of subject is precisely what I need. And it's kind of almost on a kind of similar vein in some ways. I mean, all of our stories are kind of linked because ultimately we're talking about things that frighten us as human beings. A lot of them usually around your brain and what that is capable of. But next episode, I am going to be talking a little bit about ancient Egypt, about the tombs, about the rituals, about a lot of the, sort of beliefs and kooky things that happened back in ancient Egypt. So that's going to be next week's episode. So I can't wait. I'm very excited to share my maybe sometimes not as well researched. I need to up my game in the research and find some good stuff there, Dom, because you've just smashed it out of the park today.
I love how you have, whether you planned it or not, let's just take credit for it. But my story is Russian mummified dolls, and you're about to do a story on Egypt.
I know.
Mummies, hello.
Yeah. Hi, mummies.
Oh.
Yeah, very good. Very good themes. And then I assume the one that you do the week after, are you going to stick with Russia? Are you vibing Russia?
No. I've got a few in the works and I haven't decided just yet.
Yeah, of course. Oh, it's a secret.
I'm going to pace myself. And,
I like it.
We want folks to come back again. But
yeah, absolutely.
Please do stay tuned and make sure you come back for Kate's, I'm sure, very interesting exploration into the world of Egypt. And
we will see.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dom. You're a legend. I cannot wait to chat to you next week.
Yay!
That story is fucked. That's so wild.